The story begins at a moment when everything is about to end inside Astra Prime Academy, the greatest mixed-species military school in the known galaxy, where students from hundreds of worlds train together to defend their civilizations. And the air is filled with fear because red warning lights flash across the massive glass dome above the academy as war sirens cry out that the Zorvathi Dominion has broken through the final human defenses, meaning Earth and its colonies are now hours away from destruction. And everyone in the academy knows the Zorvathi are not just conquerors but erasers, a species that leaves nothing alive behind them, so panic spreads among the students, even among powerful alien warriors who have fought many wars before, because the Zorvathi use gravity itself as a weapon, crushing cities flat and tearing planets apart. And in the middle of this chaos stands Mira Holt, a human girl who is barely noticed by anyone, small, tired, and ranked dead last among all students, known more for failing tests than passing them, someone instructors often ignore and classmates mock. And yet she has been called forward to stand before the gravity-locked hammer, an ancient weapon created by a long-lost race that believed true power came not from strength but from the ability to endure impossible weight, a hammer that does not rely on size or muscle but on will, a hammer that has defeated every species that tried to lift it, including massive warriors made of stone, energy beings who bend light, and even machines built only for calculation and force. And the hammer rests in the center of the trial hall, pushed deep into the metal floor by invisible gravity so heavy that even standing near it feels painful. And many see Mira's presence as a cruel joke because stronger humans have already failed, champions with perfect scores and battle records who could not even move the hammer a single inch. So whispers spread through the hall, voices filled with doubt and quiet laughter, asking why the weakest human has been chosen when the fate of an entire species is at stake. And the head instructor, an old alien with many eyes and no patience left, announces that the trial is only tradition now and that failure is expected, because the galaxy has already chosen its winners and losers. And when Mira steps forward, her heart pounds so loudly she feels it in her ears. And she remembers her life under Earth's heavy gravity, growing up where every movement costs effort, where bones grow dense and muscles strain just to stand. Unlike many aliens who come from light worlds or float freely in space. And she remembers her brother's last message sent during the fall of a human defense station, telling her to survive no matter what. And when she places her hands on the hammer, gravity crashes down on her like a mountain, slamming her to the floor as pain tears through her arms and legs, her vision blurring as blood fills her mouth. And laughter echoes again because everyone expects this, expects her to fail like all the others. And for a moment it seems they are right as her knees shake and the weight feels endless. But instead of trying to fight the gravity, Mira accepts it, understanding something others did not, that humans do not escape gravity but live with it every day, from the moment they are born until the moment they die. Always pulled down, always standing back up, and she thinks not of strength but of responsibility, of oceans pressing on Earth's crust, of cities standing under their own weight, of people who wake up every day carrying invisible burdens and still move forward. And she breathes slowly, grounding herself, letting the gravity pass through her instead of against her. And with a quiet sound like space tearing, the hammer responds, the invisible force shifting as if recognizing something familiar, something stubborn and unbreakable. And Mira stands, her body shaking but unbroken, lifting the hammer inch by inch as cracks spread across the trial hall floor and alarms scream louder. And when the hammer finally rises free, silence crashes down harder than any gravity, because the impossible has happened, because the weakest student has done what no one else could. And across the academy ancient systems awaken, Hidden machines buried under Earth's surface begin to power up, and far away, human warships long thought dead flicker back to life, signaling that the Last Stand protocol has been activated, not by the strongest or the smartest, but by a human who refused to stay down. And in that moment, the galaxy learns that humanity's greatest weapon was never power, but endurance. After Mira lifted the hammer, the energy it released spread through the Academy and deep into Earth itself, awakening long-dormant defense systems that had waited centuries for this very moment, and satellites that had been dark for generations flickered to life, antennas spinning as if remembering their purpose, while hidden shipyards across the planet began to hum and glow, assembling vessels from prefabricated parts faster than any alien could imagine, signaling that humanity, once thought defeated, now had a chance to fight back. And aboard the largest of these ships, the Resolute Dawn, Mira stood on the bridge with the hammer beside her, feeling its strange pull in space, a force that bent gravity itself and allowed ships to move in ways impossible with engines alone. While outside, the black shadow of the Zorvathi fleet stretched across the cosmos, thousands of warships larger than cities advancing with lethal intent, their flagship, the Worldbreaker, radiating destruction as its weapons tore through moons and planetary defenses, and humans, outnumbered and outgunned, launched into battle with fear and determination twisting together, pilots gripping controls as their ships twisted through space under the hammer's influence, appearing inside enemy formations where no one should be able to reach, moving sideways, upside down, and around impossible angles as the gravity field warped around them, giving humans an advantage the Zorvathi could not anticipate, and the first clashes were violent, with beams and missiles tearing through the void, ships exploding in fire and metal, boarding parties fighting hand-to-hand inside alien corridors as gravity shifted unpredictably, humans adapting instinctively to every change while the Zorvathi screamed in confusion, unable to control the very force they used as a weapon, and the chaos of the battlefield intensified when the enemy deployed singularity cannons, devices that crushed matter and stars alike, annihilating entire wings of the human fleet in a single instant, sending shudders through Mira's body as she felt the losses personally, knowing every ship represented lives, families, dreams, yet she refused to retreat, raising the hammer again, calling the fleet forward with authority no one expected from a student ranked last. And human ships obeyed instinctively as the hammer warped gravity to protect them from enemy fire, wrapping invisible shields around their hulls, absorbing impacts that would have destroyed them. While on the bridge, Myra's mind raced, calculating angles, thinking about weight and pressure, understanding that victory did not come from speed or firepower alone, but from controlling the environment itself, and she remembered every lesson of endurance and resilience she had ever learned. Every moment of being told she was too weak, too slow, too small. And she realized that those things did not matter here because humans did not need to outrun or outfight every opponent. They needed to endure, to keep moving even when the universe itself tried to crush them. And with that understanding, she slammed the hammer into the deck, creating a shockwave of distorted gravity that pushed enemy ships apart and sucked them into collisions with each other, ripping apart formations that had seemed invincible moments ago. While aboard the Worldbreaker, the Zorvathi commander raged as their fleet imploded under the very force they had wielded, and human soldiers aboard smaller vessels cheered as they seized abandoned enemy ships, fighting through zero-G corridors with ingenuity and courage, using tools and instincts rather than sheer force, and each victory, small or large, added to the momentum of the human fleet, giving hope where there had been none, as Mira realized the war was not about being the strongest, but about using the world's natural rules to her advantage. And she raised the hammer one final time, focusing every thought on gravity, on the pull of stars and the weight of every planet humanity had ever called home. And with a violent, impossible motion, she crushed the enemy flagship, sending its massive hull folding into itself and scattering debris across the void, ending the battle in a single decisive strike, while the surviving Zorvathi fled in disarray, their weapons jammed, their formations broken, and human ships, battered but alive, drifted through the quiet aftermath, many looking at Mira not just as a student but as a commander, a symbol of resilience and ingenuity. And though she was wounded, trembling and barely able to stand, she understood that the true strength of humanity lay not in weapons or technology alone, but in the ability to endure, to adapt, and to fight back against impossible odds, proving that even those ranked last, overlooked, and underestimated could rise to lead when the moment demanded it. And as the smoke of battle cleared across the stars, Mira looked out at the human fleet and the remnants of the enemy, knowing that the war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had the chance to survive, because they had learned to use the weight of the universe itself as their weapon, bending it to their will with courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable spirit of those who refused to surrender. After the final strike that crushed the Zorvathi flagship, silence spread across the battlefield like a heavy fog, broken only by the distant groans of damaged human ships and the faint crackle of energy shields fading, and Mira, exhausted and trembling, collapsed onto the deck of the Resolute Dawn, the hammer clattering beside her, feeling every muscle and bone scream in pain. Yet a strange calm settled over her as she realized that, for the first time, humanity had won a battle that no one believed it could. And across the stars, the surviving Zorvathi retreated, their pride shattered, their fleets scattered, leaving behind empty voids where their massive warships had once hovered like dark clouds. And as Mira lay there, medics rushing to her side, she thought not of glory or recognition, but of the countless lives lost, of the humans who had fought and died in small ships, on distant planets, and on orbital stations, their sacrifices woven into every moment of this victory. And when she finally rose to her feet, aided by trembling hands and the steady grip of the hammer, she understood that leadership and strength were not measured in ranking, skill tests, or accolades, but in the courage to stand and act when the weight of the universe pressed down with impossible force. And as the fleet regrouped, engineers and pilots working tirelessly to repair battered ships, Mira issued orders that were simple yet powerful: to secure human colonies, rescue survivors, and prepare for any counterattack. Knowing the Zorvathi might return, but confident that humanity had learned a lesson no enemy could erase. And even though the battlefield was quiet, the aftermath was filled with a different kind of chaos. As communication lines buzzed with messages from worlds that had been cut off, families calling for loved ones, communities trying to understand that they had survived a war they never thought possible. And amidst this, Mira walked the corridors of the Resolute Dawn, meeting exhausted pilots, soldiers, and technicians, offering quiet words of encouragement, smiling faintly at those who had doubted themselves, because she knew the true victory was not the destruction of the enemy, but the reaffirmation of humanity's resilience. And as the ship entered orbit above a recovering Earth, she looked down at the blue oceans and green continents, the scars of battle visible but the planet still alive, and she thought of her brother's last words, of all the people she had failed to save, and felt a heavy, almost physical weight pressing on her chest, a reminder that even victory carries sorrow. Yet she also felt pride, a deep and steady fire igniting inside, knowing that humans were not the strongest species in terms of power or numbers, but they were survivors capable of enduring anything, adapting, and rising when all seemed lost. And the hammer, now resting in a containment chamber, pulsed faintly with energy. A symbol not just of power, but of humanity's connection to the natural laws of the universe. The same laws that had kept them grounded, shaped their bodies, and tested their spirits for millennia, and the story of Mira lifting the hammer spread across human colonies, from city to city, planet to planet, inspiring everyone, teaching that even those ranked last, overlooked and underestimated, could carry the weight of a world and change history. And as Mira finally removed herself from the bridge, allowing others to take their places, she wandered the quiet corridors, thinking of the faces of students at the academy, the instructors who had doubted her, the aliens who had mocked her, and she realized that this was humanity's strength. They endured ridicule, defeat, and despair, yet when the universe demanded, they rose, combining intelligence, courage, and the stubborn refusal to give up. And as days passed, the fleet repaired itself, colonies rebuilt, and survivors told stories of how humans had bent the rules of space and gravity itself to survive. And while Mira could have taken titles, power, and fame, she chose to remain simple, teaching others that leadership was action, not recognition. And as she watched children and new recruits train under her guidance, she saw hope in their eyes, a reflection of the same spark that had allowed her to lift the hammer. And across the galaxy, whispers spread among alien species, tales of a human girl who had carried the weight of her people and of the universe. A species that may have seemed weak, small, or insignificant, yet who understood gravity, endurance, and sacrifice in a way no other could. And Mira finally understood that humanity's place in the galaxy would not be defined by brute force, but by their capacity to stand when everything tried to crush them, to act when others fled, and to survive where survival seemed impossible. And in the quiet moments, as stars glimmered beyond the hull windows, she felt the immense weight of what had been done and what was still to come, knowing that while the war had ended, the responsibility of protecting her people, guiding them, and reminding them of what they were capable of would continue, and she accepted that burden willingly, because humans always carried weight and always stood again. And the galaxy would remember that lesson, that even the weakest among them could rise to meet the impossible, and that from the smallest spark of courage, an entire species could defy extinction, bend the rules of the universe, and leave a legacy that would endure far longer than any weapon or warship, teaching that true strength lies not in victory alone, but in the spirit that refuses to be broken. And as Mira walked among her people, helping to rebuild, teaching them, and standing as a quiet but unshakable symbol of endurance, the universe seemed to acknowledge it, a subtle pull in the stars, a gentle reminder that humanity had lifted the weight of not just a hammer, but of hope itself, carrying it forward into a galaxy that would never underestimate them again, because humans lived under gravity and they had learned how to lift it.